Now, some of the most memorable things about The Lion King are, of course, these incredible costumes. Not only do they bring the lead characters to life, but also they transform the cast into every animal and plant you might find on the African savannah. Now, with so many items to create and look after, you'd be staggered at the amount of work that goes on in the costume department, which is where I'm heading right now.
Well, the costumes in Lion King are really rare in terms of not just being costumes that actors and performers wear, but they can represent scenery, they can represent architectural elements of the show. This is one of the grassland heads. It's made up of a very thin carbon fibre, which is incredibly light. There's a sort of grass corset, which is made up of artificial grass leaves, which are woven to sort of, again, create the texture and the colour and the patina that Julie was looking for. And then there's rope, which hangs from the waist to create a space and a volume, which again, when it's multiplied, creates that sort of sea of grass. This costume is one of the Dancing Lioness costumes. It's made up of a corset. It literally has thousands of beads, which are all sewn on individually, one by one, all the way around. And again, these beads are sourced from all over the world, primarily coming from Africa. Then lower down it has the beautiful silk, and similarly with the corsets, they're all individual. No two are the same.
If you go past the second row, could you have done a mold and done it in rubber or plastic and painted it? Probably. But the reason they would notice is because when the actress, the dancer, puts on this, she feels the realness of the beads. They know that they're wearing the real thing. Every piece of cloth in The Lion King was hand-printed, hand-painted, hand-printed from white fabric. When it gets worn by the actors, they feel it.
Whether a cast member is playing the flora, the plant life of the show, or the fauna, the animal life of the show, the actor is always visible. This is something that Julie Taymor calls the double event.
For example, take a look at Zazu, because of course it's an actor, but it's also a puppet. And the puppet looks like a bird, but the actor actually looks like a butler. And then what is the costume made of? Kente cloth. So we get Africa through the fabric, butler, if you will, from the silhouette of it, and yet he's also holding it as a bird. The great gift of what Julie has done in her designs is they're deep, they're complex, and they're completely understandable.
What else can we learn about the characters from the design of their costumes?
With Mufasa, he's the king. He has a ceremonial robe that he wears. He's a large bronze collar, which would indicate that that's perhaps his crown. A flip side to that would be his brother, who's emaciated, skeletal, skinny, and his costume represents that. We see the bones of him in his sort of corset and in the cage that he sits in, that sits on his back.
Now the rest of the costume, again with these leather, I used African patterns instead of fur. Who needs fur, right? It's not interesting, it's not exciting, and you can imagine, and you wouldn't see it anyway. So these patterns come from Kuba cloths in Africa, and this is made with leather because it gives the nice shape of the haunches. So it suggests a lion, but the only thing you really need, show us your tail, sir.
Well, one of the rare qualities that The Lion King has in terms of costume is that all of the surfaces on those costumes are matte. There's no sequins or sparkle. It's a matte finish, which is kind of unique, I think, but it does create this amazing sort of sun-baked feel that transports you to Africa.
But looking after hundreds of detailed costumes isn't as simple as throwing them in the washing machine.
If you can imagine your clothes that we all wear being worn 8 times a week, 52 weeks of the year, and being washed every time you wear them, how quickly they would deteriorate and how quickly they would sort of begin to fall apart. So there's an entire team of people backstage making sure that everything is as pristine tonight as it would be on day one.
Each individual costume then has an incredible level of detail that can convey a huge amount of ideas and information. But on a stage surrounded by props, set and lighting, what impact do they have on an audience?
We see natural materials, bone, feathers, beads, all coming together, none of them looking like an animal. Nobody in the entire show wears an animal suit, and yet the minute you look at them, it conjures the spirit or the soul of that animal.